From the moment the 17-year-old Filipino boy stepped onto the AGT stage, there was something different in the air. The audience didn't know his name. The judges didn't know what to expect. And even Simon Cowell, who had seen every kind of performer walk in front of him, sat back with that familiar skeptical expression. The young Filipino boy stood quietly under the warm glow of the spotlight, his hands slightly trembling, but his eyes filled with determination. He wasn't there for fame or attention. He was there to prove something, not just to the world, but to himself. The judges asked him a few questions, and he answered softly, barely above a whisper, but behind that quiet voice was a storm waiting to erupt. The moment the music started, the entire room shifted. The first note that came out of his mouth was so powerful, so unexpectedly rich that the audience collectively gasped. Simon Cowell, who had been leaning back casually in his chair, suddenly jolted upright. His face froze for a moment, the kind of reaction he only has when he hears something truly extraordinary. The young Filipino boy continued singing with a tone that carried emotion far beyond his age. There was pain, struggle, joy, and hope all mixed into one voice. It didn't sound like a teenager singing. It sounded like someone who had lived 1,000 lifetimes. Someone who had seen darkness but still chose to shine. As he moved from the lower notes to the soaring high notes, the entire theater fell into a silent trance. Every note he hit was precise, controlled, and filled with emotion. People in the audience started wiping their eyes, overwhelmed by the raw power of his voice. The boy didn't add unnecessary showmanship. He didn't rely on tricks or gimmicks. He simply stood there and poured his heart out through his music. That authenticity made it feel even more emotional. He wasn't trying to imitate anyone. He was telling his story through every word and every note. Halfway through the performance, he transitioned into a stunning high pitch that seemed impossible for his age. Simon Cowell's eyebrows shot up. As he exchanged looks with the other judges, all equally shocked, the young boy's voice filled the entire room, echoing off the walls with a clarity that felt unreal. It wasn't just the voice, it was the conviction behind it. He sang like someone who had fought battles and carried dreams bigger than the stage he was standing on. You could feel the years of practice, the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, all leading up to this moment. The audience could sense greatness unfolding right in front of their eyes. Phones slowly came out. People began recording, wanting to capture this legendary moment. Even the backstage crew, who had seen hundreds of performances, stopped what they were doing just to listen. The judges' faces softened from shock to admiration, and even Simon, the hardest to impress, stared without blinking. His usual critical, analyzing expression was replaced with something rare. Pure amazement. He didn't even hide it. He leaned forward, rested his chin on his hand, and watched. With the expression of someone witnessing history being made, as the song progressed into its emotional peak, the young Filipino boy pushed his voice to places few singers could reach. His pitch climbed higher and higher, but instead of losing control, he became even more precise. His voice didn't crack, didn't waver. It soared. The entire audience exhaled together, astonished that someone so young could possess that kind of vocal mastery. The boy closed his eyes, raised the microphone slightly, and delivered the most powerful note of the entire performance. It echoed through the theater like a wave of emotion, hitting everyone at once. People stood up from their seats, driven purely by instinct, cheering loudly even before the song ended. When he reached the final note, he held it perfectly, letting it ring through the air until the music faded. The second the note ended, the theater exploded. The audience roared with applause, people standing, cheering, clapping, screaming his name, even though they had just learned it minutes earlier. The judges rose to their feet with a standing ovation, all smiling in disbelief at what they just witnessed. And then the camera turned to Simon Cowell. He was still frozen, still processing what happened. His mouth was slightly open, his eyes wide, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't have a single word to say. The young Filipino boy looked out at the sea of cheering fans. Overwhelmed by the reaction, tears started to form in his eyes, not from sadness, but from relief and pride. He had done what he came to do. He had shown his talent, shared his story, and touched the hearts of millions. The judges began giving their feedback, and every one of them praised him for his unbelievable talent. They mentioned his vocal control, his emotional delivery, and his ability to sing like a seasoned professional despite being only 17 years old. Heidi told him his voice was a gift, how he called the performance world class. Sophia said she felt goosebumps the entire time. Then it was Simon's turn. The audience quieted down, curious to hear what he would say. Simon looked at the boy for a few seconds, trying to gather his thoughts. Finally, he spoke in a softer tone than usual. He told the boy that he had one of the most extraordinary voices he had ever heard from someone his age. He said the performance was flawless, emotional, and unforgettable. He admitted that the first note froze him because he didn't expect a young Filipino boy to have a voice that powerful and refined, and then with the kind of smile he reserves only for truly exceptional talent. He told the boy that he believed he had a very bright future ahead of him. On and off the AGT stage, the audience erupted once again, cheering loudly as the boy stood there speechless, overwhelmed by the praise. As he walked backstage, he was greeted by staff and contestants who congratulated him and complimented his talent. Some hugged him, others told him he had just delivered one of the greatest performances in AGT history. Word spread quickly online, and within minutes, clips of his performance went viral. Fans around the world who saw the broadcast flooded social media with comments praising the young Filipino sensation. People from the Philippines expressed immense pride, calling him a shining example of Filipino talent. Others from different countries said they had never heard a voice like his before. Some said they cried, some said they got chills, and others said they replayed the performance over and over again. News outlets picked up the story, labeling him as the 17-year-old Filipino boy who froze Simon Cowell. Influencers reacted to the clip, vocal coaches analyzed his technique, and AGT fans declared his audition one of the greatest moments in the show's history. Through all the praise, the boy remained humble in interviews. He spoke softly about how grateful he was for the opportunity, and how he dedicated his performance to his family and everyone who believed in him. He shared how he practiced for years, how he sang at local events, and how he always dreamed of singing on a big stage. He talked about the challenges he faced, and how his passion for music kept him going, even when things were difficult. As days passed, his audition continued to gain millions of views, and people began begging AGT to upload the full version. Some commented that he deserved the golden buzzer. Others asked why Simon didn't hit it instantly, and many said they had never felt this emotional listening to a performance before. The boy's life changed overnight. He went from singing in small places to becoming a global sensation. But what amazed people most was not just his voice, it was his humility, his heart, and the way he carried himself. Despite the sudden fame, even months later, people still talked about his audition. Many called it the moment AGT changed forever. Others said it reminded them why they love talent shows in the first place, to witness raw talent rise from unexpected places. And through all of this, the boy continued to sing, continued to inspire, and continued to prove that age doesn't define greatness. Passion does, hard work does, heart does. His audition became a symbol of hope for young dreamers everywhere, especially in the Philippines, where fans celebrated his achievement with immense pride. He showed that even at 17 years old, even coming from a small place, you can step onto the biggest stage in the world and shock everyone, including Simon Cowell. His story became a reminder that no dream is too big and no dreamer too small. Even today, when people rewatch his performance, they still feel the chills from that first note. They still see Simon freeze in disbelief. They still hear the passion in every word he sang, and they still remember the moment. A 17-year-old Filipino boy walked onto the AGT stage and delivered a performance that will live forever in the hearts of millions.